Alright, so I'm doing one of these candid videos again, and this microphone is different. It's the Blue Snowball. It's what I used to use before I got the new microphone. Gonna adjust this thingy. Boop, boop. As you can see, I got the nice microphone arm set where it's set behind me. So I kind of have a two mic setup going. A lot less friction when I'm gonna do audio recordings. However, this is still me kind of learning my setup. So sorry about the beginning. Anyways, I'm going to talk in this video about something I wanted to talk about for a while. I started online classes in March of 2020 due to the pandemic, and as I've gone through nearly 2 full semesters of it, I just want to talk a little bit about why online classes are different, why they're not the same, and talk about the positives and negatives a little bit. And first of all, going based off of my experience, when we look at different things, I'm just checking the audio. When you look at different things in online classes, the first problem that comes to mind for me is people just don't pay attention as well. I've heard of programs cutting their hours of their classes short while keeping the prices the same, instructing their professors to teach half as long, and instructing their professors to focus on engagement, which essentially means we want them to stay engaged, not drop out, so that they don't, they don't lose more money because of the certain current situation going on, and most businesses are losing money. And schools are one of those entities, which is understandable, but inherently that changes the whole point of the education, right? If you're trying to focus on engagement more than you're trying to focus on teaching, there comes to be some issues there. And this can be seen in some experiences that I've had, and I know other people have had. So that's why I wanted to make this video. People that I know personally can't focus as well. People I know personally, even though the content may be getting easier, their GPA has gone down a little bit because of their inability to focus in the same way. They just can't get into that same, okay, I'm in class, I'm focusing, the teacher's talking to me, because they have distractions from their computer, which is required to use obviously when it's online classes and it's through Zoom, and there's not the same type of interaction. And I think there's a lot of mental snapshots that I take, and a lot of stuff that I keep in the back of my mind from just hearing the professor talk in person, and those sort of auditory backlogs don't exactly stay there when I'm doing online classes as much, because it just feels like I'm watching a YouTube video or something. It doesn't feel real. The only times it feels real maybe is when I'm doing breakout rooms with other people in class, which I think is a good way, and I'm going to talk about this. And there are some positives, productivity-wise, I think, to online classes, and if you are the type of person that it works for, it does do very well for you. But I just know a lot of people that aren't doing well with them. I have friends and family who have discussed with me about they're struggling to focus. I have ended up being one of those people who is kind of doing well due to the circumstances, just based on the way that I am. It kind of is conducive for me in getting decent grades and retaining information. However, a lot of people that I've talked to have said otherwise, and I'm just looking at the topics because I got to tell you, the setup's different. I'm still trying to figure it out, but I wanted to get this video out to you because it is a topic I'm passionate about, and the new mic, there's a lot of stuff going on. I'm back at school, and this is a topic that I've wanted to talk to you about for a while. I just want to give someone an example of how this is different than in-person class when we're talking about the in-person interaction and even the social pressure to pay attention. If you are the person if you are a person who's ever seen somebody on their phone in class, ever seen somebody clearly not paying attention in class, it's obvious to the professor. It's obvious to everybody. However, when you're in Zoom, you can have your webcam, right? So for example, my webcam's right there. behind me. You can have something completely different going on your screen, and it'll look like you're paying attention to Zoom. And that's bad, because in class, if you're on your phone, you're clearly not paying attention. It's easy enough to see as a professor that the person's not paying attention. They can call you out. You can have that social pressure of like, okay, if I'm not paying attention, I'm being rude. It's obvious. So I mean, that sort of level of it being obvious is what's going to make people less inclined to not pay attention. To people who have the habit of people who just don't have good habits regarding like staying focused on technology or studying are gonna have a really hard time doing it with class, because even, for example, how many people do you know in school who have Mac laptops, which also have notifications to their iPhones? That's not great. It causes a lot of kids, in my opinion, and students to text during class without being noticed, and that already was kind of a problem with laptops in the first place while in class. Now take that a step further and make it so that you're not even going to get called out in person by the professor. There's a little bit of another negative aspect I want to talk about, where we're kind of losing a little bit of the social aspect of class, which I think positively a lot of professors are doing a good job of making breakout rooms multiple times during the classes I'm in, but you don't have a very important thing in college, which I think kind of helps you meet new people, and especially I went to a business school. I got my degree in marketing and I'm getting my MBA. So this is very common in the business school. I don't know how it is in the arts and science. Probably in arts and sciences, it's similar, and other different programs too. In between classes, in the building where you have your classes, you meet someone from class, you sat next to them, you discuss things before class, after class, you kind of get normal interactions, you meet people, you make some whether it's acquaintances or actual friends. I think that's kind of stuff's very important. And the fact that this sort of online class structure is taking place, you don't mingle before class, you don't mingle after class. You can't say anything to the professor before class, really. Maybe if the professor decides to join the Zoom a few minutes early and you can say something. But generally speaking, most of the professors I've experienced, maybe 5 minutes before they're in there. I guess it could be similar in person, but it just seems to be a little different. They also kind of end class on a specific note. They're like, all right, class is over. Most people don't stay afterwards. I mean, they in person sometimes didn't, but it just always felt a little more welcoming to me to be able to walk up to the professor than, say, for example, Zoom is going on. And there's only a few minutes that the professor wants to stay afterwards, and that would be the same in person. But if you go and try to have a conversation with them about something, anyone else who stays on the Zoom is going to hear it. Now, maybe in person, the person could hear you asking the professor something, but it just feels a little less threatening to me. Not threatening, but it feels a little less overwhelming to me to just go up to the person and talk to them rather than and think like, okay, maybe the person behind me hears, but not like the whole line of people waiting to talk to the professor, rather than in Zoom, like every single person can hear me. I think if you're good with time management, these online classes are very beneficial to you. If not, they can be beneficial to you, but I think personally, there's an issue regarding the lack of structure that this sort of is giving people more, especially younger kids who are in college. So here's an example. For me, the way my school works is I commute to school from a different part of the campus, right? It's like a 30-minute commute from where I'm staying to the buildings that I have classes in. If I had class in undergrad, sometimes 5 days a week, that is 5 hours a week of commuting. I think it's giving me a lot of extra time not having to ever commute, and I appreciate that. But as it's been shown on this channel, I'm very passionate about time management. I know how to work with my time in general, so I'm going to utilize those 5 hours. A lot of other people are just going to waste those 5 hours, personally. That's what I kind of noticed. I think those 5 hours don't get probably used as well by as many people as they could. I mean, here's an example, right? in between classes, a lot of people have what's called buffer time. And while there is that 5 hours of actual travel time, there's also like a 30-minute buffer before you go leave or after, or sorry, before you leave to go to the classes, and then after there's like probably 15 minutes. So it can be anywhere from another 30 to 60 minutes of what I like to call buffer time, where people are not going to do anything productive because they don't want to try. They're not going to travel, right? They're not going to do something really productive and then immediately go to the bus stop, right? Because you don't want to miss a shuttle. You don't want to miss the train, right? So, I mean, this thing can add, for students who were like me and had all those commutes, possibly, I would argue anywhere from 7 to maybe 10. Maybe, like I'm stretching it with 10, but probably like 7.5 hours a week of time. And you take that out, those hours, and you just work on homework. And in some business schools, you can get the majority of your classwork done for the week in that time, right? So I view it like that. I view that I have a whole 7 hours of time to be productive, or time to work out or something like that. And I hope that's what people are doing. But what I find, and it's true via the via Parkinson's law, is the more time you give someone to do something, the more time it's going to take them to do something. And since college inherently has this sense of you divvy up the time how you want to, the majority of people are not very into time management. The majority of people kind of just go with the flow, I'd say. And if you don't directly divvy up the time that you work on things and when you're going to work on them, that 7 hours is just time for people to kind of do nothing while getting their homework done. Like they're not probably making more time to do the homework or making more time to do something else productive, like starting to work out, because a lot of people will claim, and I know people personally who even don't commute for their job anymore, they're like, oh, I still don't have time to work out. And in my head, I'm like, I don't get how. Like, if you didn't have time to work out before you started this online class schedule or online job, and you're going to make the same excuse when you have like 5 to 10 hours more a week, it kind of shows the lack of initiative a lot of people take, even in a workplace situation, to use the extra time that they're getting. So I think actually it's a negative for a lot of people, this extra time, because what are people doing with the extra time? If you're doing something positive with it, it's a positive. If you're doing something negative with it, I think the extra time is a negative, because in my opinion, crazy idea, if you just spend those extra 7 to 10 hours a week scrolling on your phone more, when you wake up, you're just kind of feeding into your social media addiction, or you spend more time bitching TV shows. Sure, it's more entertainment, but I mean, habits beget habits. So if you're just going to build upon habits of entertaining yourself or being on social media, you inherently will probably not actually come out more productive of this quarantine pandemic life than you were beforehand. And I have a couple other more points that I want to make. And I've noticed this because I am in a master's program. There's a technical divide with online classes that is just inherently unfair. I think, for me, I am somebody who has always been good and passionate with tech. I like it. I enjoy it. That's why the online classes to me are kind of fun. In a weird way, I do miss in person a lot. I miss a lot of the in-between time and all that sort of thing. But, it's unfair when I see people who are from a generation above mine, someone who's in their 40s, 50s, who doesn't have as much of a type of expansive knowledge about just even basic computer functions. I feel like sometimes it's unfair, because I know that everything's like open book, open note for a lot of classes. And those who aren't having that situation, good on your teachers, because they should keep the difficulty the same. But I know a lot of people who are having not in-person class difficulty, but they don't realize that that's the case. So I've had open book, open note tests in person before. However, this is open computer. This is open me with my PC with a lot of processing power. This is me. Everything's quick. I can get information really fast. I have my whole setup. I have 2 monitors. Like, I had situations where it's open book, open note. And while I did study for it, I didn't feel like I needed to because of Control F and because of the fact that I personally was able to search through a book better than somebody else who just doesn't have experience doing that quickly for information. Because I do a lot of self-research myself, and I go through a lot of information when I do these studying these different concepts, and I just don't feel like a lot of the people who aren't as technically savvy are benefiting from this whole thing, right? So me personally, I'm not going to say I could not study. I'm just going to say I could be underprepared and overperform, while somebody else who doesn't have that same capability could be overprepared and underperform, or just be prepared and underperform because they may not have taken as good of notes because they are online and they're not retaining the information as well, and all those sort of things that I mentioned earlier, and that's just kind of unfair, right? And I know people who just, they weren't very technologically savvy, and you threw them into the same education, maybe a little easier content-wise, but you threw them into the same type of education with lack of training on how to navigate online classes, lack of training on how to deal with the stressors that are happening now, and also charging them pretty much the same price most of the time, which I think has been one of the biggest issues I've had with online classes in the past year. If you're going to charge, I mean, I understand they need to make the money to keep the school running. I'm not going to get into how endowments are structured and how they conveniently, in a lot of senses, had claimed things about discretionary parts of their endowment being tied up in other things. There are situations where schools will have huge donations that are only supposed to go towards certain areas. However, it's been shown that the most important job at a lot of these universities is not being the president of the school. It's whoever's in charge of the endowment. And that's a whole problem in and of itself. But you're charging the same price for a lesser education in the sense that people weren't prepared for it. They didn't sign up for it, but they kind of have to do it if they want to keep their lives on track. So I don't like that. I understand the current situation going on, but most schools aren't charging less of a price, which I have a problem with. And this last thing that I want to bring up, and I don't want to keep it negative the whole time, but I have to say I feel bad for kids. I feel bad for kids that are just not going to have the same social interactions that I did, and I feel bad for them. And this could be a thing where it's from March 2020 till, I don't know, March 2022, summer 2022, until everything's almost completely normal. When I say kids, by the way, I mean anybody who's not in college, but more specifically, people who are children from the age of like kindergarten to like 6th grade. I think junior high kids are at the point where they're like already kind of set in their ways. A bit in regards to their social structure, and maybe even up to high school, and how they view school and everything. And this isn't great for them either. The high schoolers is not great for them. It's not great for people in junior high, but they can handle it a little bit better. But I know younger kids who are just not taking this well, and I wish that this will get over as quickly as possible so these kids can get through it. But there's so many basic social interactions, and early age development about social interactions is what I'm really worried about, because you have these kids who can't see their teachers' faces. They can't see how other people are reacting to them based on the actions they're taking and the words they're saying. So just basic interactions of like, you say something nice and someone smiles back, or you say something rude and someone frowns. They're not going to really get those cues outside of home anymore, right? But it can't be overstated how, unless like you have a parent who's able to be with you all the time and really is working hard to make sure that their kid is getting that same sort of social stimulus, And it's not going to be the same, by the way, right? Because it's just one person's mother or father or family member consistently giving them something that the kid's used to anyways at home. And by the way, a lot of parents aren't available in that sense anymore, or not anymore, but during the situation, because they do have to work. And you're just not going to see as well of a socially, the next generation, or that generation of kids that are going through their social development now are not going to be as socially capable as they would have been, in my opinion. I hope that it's not the case, but I know that masks are very important to wear. It's just, it's hard to hear these kids go through some of the things I've heard they're going through, be it like sad and depressed at such a young age because they don't get to see their friends. They see their friends and they're always in masks, so they don't have that facial sort of, I mean, the way we express ourselves is our expression of emotion. And then at a young age, understanding what those different faces and what those different interactions mean is just through practice. And that's through the social interaction that we have. So I feel bad for the kids. Online classes just aren't the same. I did want to keep this candid convo just real because it's something that a lot of people are going through right now. And I want to say as my last thing that I really hope that it's going to be over sooner than later, because I think a majority of the people are not happy with it. I think the most people, obviously, and this is nothing groundbreaking, people aren't happy with the last year. But I will say that if you do utilize it to your best and make the most of it, you're going to come out of the situation feeling very grateful for the fact that you have, well, I don't want to say your life back, but normalcy back, and just do the best you can right now. It'll be better. I'm hoping that these kids don't have any sort of long-term social problems due to the few years of not having that face-to-face interaction, and that anybody who is not doing great with online classes due to their inability to focus because it's just harder, or due to their lack of technological savvy or tech savvy because they just weren't prepared and it's not their fault. I wish you the best. It's going to be a hard next whatever it's going to be. I don't want to say when it's going to be over, but we'll get through it. And I personally am happy that I have people in my corner and that it's been a pretty decent 2020 and start of 2021. Sorry for getting this video out a day late. Should have done it yesterday. Kind of got distracted with the Chiefs. You know, Pat Mahomes. I don't want to say anything, my prediction, because I'll just jinx if he's going to be, for the AFC Championship game. So with that being said, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.